Welcome to Diamond Dogs Education, where we're trying to develop teachers, not just better coaches. It began with a feeling. I witnessed a number of coach-player interactions that just didn't feel right. They were attempts at humor using sarcasm. Now, maybe it's because I'm not naturally that funny, and that's not really part of my coaching personality. And in truth, whenever I try to be funny, it never really goes that well. Nobody laughs or someone takes my comment the wrong way. And I'm especially inept at using sarcasm, even around my friends. Maybe that's why coaches who use sarcasm to communicate with their athletes just didn't feel right to me. So I decided to dig into this topic a little further. Intuitively, I knew that sarcasm in the coaching environment could certainly be detrimental. After all, by its very nature, the speaker says something that is not true. I thought to myself, what does that do to the trust that a player has for a coach? They are intentionally saying something that's not true. Now, I think we would all agree that communication is foundational to coaching and also to building trust in the coach-player relationship. And I just thought that making false statements to get a reaction could not possibly build this relationship. During my research on sarcasm, I found multiple references to the complexity of this form of communication. It's complicated, it's complex, it's problematic. Sarcasm is all of these things. When we think about the foundational nature of communication in building a strong coach-player relationship, there's no question that highly complex, intricate forms of speech can really complicate things. I was also surprised to see some strong labels in the research around sarcasm. Sarcastic language is described as verbal aggression, and the person receiving a sarcastic comment is termed the victim. As coaches, we would never want our players to be the victim of any aggression, much less the victim of a communication method that we choose. I think there are four main reasons to avoid using sarcastic language as a coach. First, by definition, sarcasm uses the opposite of the truth to elicit a dramatic reaction. This can make it very difficult for players to know when you are actually praising them. Every time you provide feedback, they're going to have to ask themselves whether you're being sincere or whether you're being sarcastic to be funny or to generate a reaction. Secondly, sarcasm is an indirect form of criticism. Sarcasm in relationships is described as passive-aggressive communication, or a more polite way to criticize. With our athletes, clear, direct communication is crucial for understanding, and sarcasm does not promote that clarity when we're providing feedback. It's also important to remember that the indirect nature of sarcasm also means that it is incredibly inefficient. When receiving a sarcastic comment, the listener or victim begins to engage in a fairly complex process. First, they hear your literal meaning, the actual words coming out of your mouth. Second, they need to realize that unexpectedly, those words contradict the facts of what they saw or what they did in their performance. And then third, they need to replace the literal meaning that they heard with a non-literal meaning to actually understand what you're trying to tell them. That takes us to the third reason to avoid sarcasm with your athletes. Reason number 3 is because there is far too much room for misinterpretation. Based on the process that I just described, there are multiple areas where sarcastic feedback can go sideways. What if the player only hears the literal meaning and doesn't realize you're being sarcastic? Or what if they don't have enough time before the next repetition to analyze your feedback and realize that it goes against the facts and that you're trying to be sarcastic? What if the athlete replaces the literal meaning, or the words you actually used, with a non-literal meaning, which is what you intended to say, but it's different than what you actually intended to say? Probably just hearing that And hearing me describe that is confusing for you right now. So imagine what it does to a player who's expecting clear, concise performance feedback. Coach-player communication should be rapid, should be clear and efficient. Sarcasm is the opposite. It is slow, it is vague, and it can be confusing. We've talked mostly about the use of sarcasm as a method of feedback, but our last reason to avoid sarcastic language extends to other forms of athlete communication. Even at team dinners or off-field interactions of any kind, the use of sarcasm can cause team members to become guarded, so they are not the next target or victim. Remember back to the definition on slide 3 that defines sarcasm as a sharp utterance designed to cut or give pain. When players become guarded and don't want to be vulnerable, it's extremely problematic, especially when viewed through the lens of building a strong culture. In Daniel Coyle's book, The Culture Code, the author says that group performance depends on behavior that communicates one powerful, overarching idea. We are safe and connected. The feeling of safety quickly evaporates in environments that use sarcasm, that have a victim of that language, and use words designed to give pain. Communication is a foundational principle in coaching. I hope you've learned to be more aware of the dangers of using sarcasm in a coaching environment, and also that you're now able to recognize when coaches around you are using this toxic form of humor or feedback. Let's all agree to choose a different communication method and create a better learning environment for all of our players.